Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center for our pre-flight briefings for the final flight of the Space Shuttle program, Atlantis' mission to the International Space Station, STS-135. We have a series of briefings for you today, the usual set of briefings to lay out the entire mission for you ahead of the launch, which is scheduled for next Friday, July 8th. The first briefing is our usual program overview briefing with the two program managers. John Shannon is the program manager for the Space Shuttle, and Mike Suffredini is the program manager for the International Space Station. Of course, we'll hear from both gentlemen, and then we'll take questions here and at other NASA centers that are online. With that, I'll turn it over to John.
Okay, hey, thanks, Kyle. I tell you, I'm just extremely happy to be able to have the opportunity to talk to you about STS-135. This was a flight that we were not sure as late as really this January that we were going to have the opportunity to fly. At that time, we were discussing the potential of maybe moving the STS-335 launch on need stack over to fly STS-135. But if you think about where we were in January, it looked pretty ambitious to be able to do that and fly in late June as was being proposed. In January, you know, we had our significant technical issue with the external tank still in front of us that we were vigorously working through. We had two flights that were ahead of us, including the really ambitious AMS flight that we just flew and landed last month. And it just looked like it was quite a hill to climb, especially with the reduced workforce that we had, knowing that we had been going through this progressive series of layoffs, and that the team that was executing all of this activity over the first part of this year the contractor side would either move to a different program or be laid off this summer. In addition to that, the funding was uncertain, and we had to stay below pretty aggressive budget marks to allow us to extend the program out to go fly it. And here we are today. And I just am so impressed by the team, because we just came off of a great flight readiness review with really no issues at all. The review consisted mostly of talking about past issues and what we had done to mitigate them for this flight. We did a tanking test, which showed the rigor with which we approach our technical problems, and it could not have gone better. The tank performed flawlessly. We did our X-rays to make sure that we were in good shape, and here we are, ready to go. Roughly about 10 days after the initial launch date of June 28th was just kind of thrown out, even like last summer. And for this team to have come that far under the circumstances that we've been living under this year, and complete the two missions and then be ready to go for this one, I think is just a huge testament to how professional they are. And the payload, you know, for this flight, I think it's really fitting that this is what we're going to fly for the last flight of the shuttle, to get the International Space Station just completely squared away for its extended life, and we can phase over to the research and utilization parts of its life. So here we are, poised to finish strong and preserve the legacy of everyone that has been a part of the shuttle team. And I'm just extremely proud to be part of that. Thanks.
Mike.
Well, good morning, everyone. As John said, we're extremely pleased to be sitting before you today talking about this flight, STS-135. From an ISS perspective, it is carrying up critical supplies. Some folks look at this flight and perhaps don't see the excitement because we don't have a piece of major assembly hardware going up. But we've got the MPLM as full as we've ever had it from a cargo perspective. We've got the mid-deck full. All of these supplies are going to be the lifeline to help us extend our period of time we can go on orbit before our commercial providers start flying regularly to ISS. And that was critical for us to give them the time they need to make sure their vehicles are ready to go fly, finish their development, get their test flights behind them, and then start servicing ISS. So from our perspective, while it doesn't look very sexy, it's one of the most important flights that we've ever had come to ISS from a shuttle perspective. This on orbit concludes a period of extremely busy time for us on ISS. We have changed our focus to research. About a year ago, we started giving research instead of the previous way we operated, which was the systems guys did everything they had to do, and then the time that was left was devoted to research. We, about a year ago, shifted to the other way of doing business, which is first you give research what they require, and then you figure out how to do the system work around that. But be that as it may, of course, you always get challenged, and this last year, things started kind of moving to the right. We had the shuttles moved, we had ATV moved. We got things kind of bunched up so that this last few months we've been extremely busy on orbit. We had STS-134, we had an ATV that had to boost the ISS to the highest altitude she's ever been at. We had to get the ATV off and get the progress on, and then we have ULF-7 coming right in the heels of that. So following ULF-7, we will be able to transition and provide more time to research, whereas prior to that time, we weren't able to devote the total amount of time that we had been asked, and that was weighing heavily on our minds. But in the end, you got to do what you need to for the system so that it can ultimately support research in the long run. During this period prior to ULF-7, we expected that we would not have much time for research. We showed weeks for anywhere from 0 to 10 hours, and we challenged the team way back prior to STS-134. Cumulatively, compared to what we thought we were going to give them, we were able to give them about 100 hours more than what we'd expected. So the team has really focused hard on doing research while we've wrapped up these last few missions to ISS. This particular mission will be a challenge for us as well. They all seem to be, but this one has its own unique challenges. Of course, we're flying a crew of 4. We're doing that in order to make sure we have what we used to refer to as CSCS. I don't know what we call this case that we're flying into today. But we've built a case around protecting the crew if in the unlikely event we have a shuttle problem. Before, we used to plan to bring another shuttle up, and we always had one ready to fly in time. We made sure we had the logistics to support. On this particular flight, we have a plan for returning the crew. We have to utilize the Soyuz. We do it over an extended period of time, and we gradually bring the crew back down, and we had to make sure we had all the supplies on orbit to support that. And that's been looked at closely, and we're in a good posture. So 4 crew allows us to do that. Of course, 4 crew then makes it difficult to get all the work done on orbit that we normally do. And this being Atlantis, we don't have the extension time on orbit as we do with the other Spitz-capable vehicles. And so with the 7 planned dock days and 4 crew, it's going to be extremely busy on orbit. But we've got one of the finest crews we've ever flown. We have an incredibly experienced ops team. The design guys and analysis folks on the ground have run a number of cases for various versions of how full the MPLM would be, and that's more difficult than it sounds, but you have to know what the load cases are. You need to make sure the CG's right. When you put a mass that big in the payload bay of the orbiter, you have to know that it can control itself on entry and landing. So that's a phenomenal amount of work that was done. In addition to that, we have a number of critical ORUs, many of which were repaired and were on longer schedules. I had thought that maybe we could move this flight a little to the right, but we weren't really ultimately able to do that. So therefore, we sent the team off with actions to go get their hardware ready to go fly, and they did a tremendous job. Each of the ORUs that we needed to have on this flight they picked up the pace, they got them refurbed and in the MPLM, including something we call the advanced RIFTA. This is the tank that takes the brine from the urine processing assembly. Typically, we fill those up and have thrown them away, and they're big, heavy tanks. We've gone to a process now with this new design where we can empty the tank on orbit, and then we dump the brine either into the Rodnik tanks or disposable cans or bags. So the team has done a remarkable job getting ready for this flight, and in spite of how simple the cargo bay may look, it's a very critical flight to us, and we're ready to go. And I think it's very fitting last flight of the shuttle to play such a critical role in the future success of ISS. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for questions. To make this easy, we'll just run the front line if you have a question. We'll start right down here on the front. Where's the... Or back there.
That's in USA Today. One question for each of you, if I might. For John Shannon, can you run us through the most recent shuttle employment numbers, where your workforce stands today, and what you expect it to be by the end of August? And for Mike Suffredini, can you remind me of the numbers of how long the supplies on the shuttle will get you to have a healthy ISS life versus where you would have stood without this flight? Thank you.
Okay, so the first was the question on the current workforce and the plans for the workforce. Right now, Tracy, we're down to those required just for sustaining engineering and operation of the last flight. So it's about 5,500 contractor employees right now, and that's spread across Texas, Utah, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and a little bit under 1,200 civil servants. So we're at about 6,700 total people working on the shuttle program. And the big layoff is really right after the shuttle landing, and then we will keep some people in Florida for down mission processing. So on July 22nd, if we launch on July 8th, there will be a significant loss, about 3,200 contractors. There are progressive other layoffs in August, in the middle of August, for all of our prime contractors and the subs. So they will go into the transition retirement, which is just the configuration of the vehicles and dispositioning the hardware. That's under 1,000 people total. So that's where we are right now, and where we should be in about a month and a half.
And Tracy, to answer your question, this flight, and assuming that the HTV and ATVs fly, which is expected, we should be able to do nominal operations with research Support 6 crew through 2012. And so that was our goal with this flight. This flight gave us about 6 more months on orbit worth of supplies. And so that was critical to us, because that sounds like it's not that much, but what it does is give you time to manage. If the shuttle didn't fly, we'd have to start talking today about reducing the amount of research we were going to do in order to make sure that the only thing on the HTVs and the ATVs were going to be supplies for the crew. So this gave us the added flexibility of letting us continue research, take care of the crew through 2012. About midway through 2012, though, we'll have to have that look again and say, okay, where are our vehicles and our commercial vehicles, and if we get nervous about their ability to support within that next 6 months or so, then we will be having that conversation. I would tell you today, I think they'll be fine. I'm expecting to see them here in late fall, early next year, and that'll be in plenty of time to keep the logistics train going.
Let's get Bill right there.
Bill Horowitz, CBS News, with one for each of you. John, what's the mood like going into this flight? You've spent your career in this, and so have all these other people, and the moment's finally gotten here.
Well, I can't, there's a big awareness of this is the last, shuttle activity that we're going to do. This team is not really focused right now on last. I see a huge amount of determination to make sure that this flight goes extremely well. There's a lot of pride too, because like I described in the opening comments, in January, this was really ambitious to get to the point we're at right now. And the team is aware that, carrying on their shoulders is the responsibility for 30 years of legacy of this iconic program, iconic space program for the nation. And I see a lot of determination, and the team has had time to prepare for the end of the program. It's been interesting. The folks that have been kind of on the outside of the program are having a more difficult time, I think, dealing with the end of the shuttle than the actual shuttle program, because we've been looking at it and preparing for it and planning for quite a while. It's tough to break up a team that has performed so well for so long. I am extremely pleased with how the contractor leadership has treated their employees, either moving skills to other programs that they have, or folks that they cannot move to other programs. They've put together very fair severance packages, and they've worked very hard to try to have things like job fairs and other workforce activities that can help them get placed in other areas. And that's been very successful in Texas, in Florida, and in Alabama, and really everywhere. So, you're balancing two things. One is you're trying to treat the workforce with a tremendous amount of respect, and you're also trying to get the job done. And nobody takes it for granted that every shuttle flight is going to go extremely well. You have to work very hard to ensure that that's going to happen. And that's just what I see with the core shuttle team right now, is just an extreme determination to make sure that it goes well and that we end up right.
And one quick one for Mike Suffredini. Can you expand on your last answer about COTS? Tell us what you're thinking with SpaceX with flights 1 and 2, and when you expect these guys to fly. I was interested in the impact of the engine fire on the Taurus and just how all that stacks up.
Let's see, for SpaceX, of course, these aren't set. And in this environment, these guys are trying to perform. So they would like us to show aggressive dates to challenge the team and make sure everybody focuses on them flying as soon as they can. That's balanced with us. We have to pick slots for them to come to ISS that meet our needs, that we can be ready for them. So we're having those conversations. With SpaceX specifically, we're looking at combining. They want to combine their remaining 2 demo flights into one and come to ISS. I'll actually have that conversation this afternoon and decide whether or not we can be comfortable with that with our friends in the COTS office. And then, assuming we agree to that, I would expect to see that demonstration flight late in the fall. I would tell you a month, but then they, everybody gets upset when we lean too far forward. But I would say in the last quarter of the calendar year, probably midway through the last quarter of the calendar year, is probably what you'll see us shoot for that SpaceX flight that actually docks to ISS. As far as orbital goes, that's a little more challenging. They also wanted to try. In fact, currently, I think we showed them in December. They were trying to get at a test flight before that. Now, similar to what SpaceX did, the engine failure they experienced on the ground has yet to be rolled into the schedule. They're still sorting through the metallurgy associated with the problem and seeing if it's systemic across the fleet of engines or not. And so they haven't officially come back and talked to us. I would expect today, assuming that doesn't have a huge square wave, I would expect to see them fly in the first quarter of next year, their demo flight to ISS. But that's the engine failure notwithstanding. We haven't understood the impacts of that to the schedule yet.
Go ahead, Mark, right here.
Thank you, Mark Carreau for Aviation Week, and I have a question and a follow-up. My first question is for Mike Suffredini. I think in the past you've sort of characterized, especially the life support gear on the station that's recycling the water and the oxygen as sort of in the development stage. And I wonder if you can sort of characterize where you'll be with ULF-7 once it reaches a station in terms of additional troubleshooting you can do, and also the kinds of spare parts you have to keep the life support systems working.
That's a great question, and I could spend 3 hours talking about the life support system on ISS, and I won't do that to you guys. Let me back up and say the TRL level alone has probably been brought up a couple of notches just in the last year of operation on board ISS. We've learned quite a bit about these systems. Remember, we started with the UPA problem, and we think we now understand would cause that concern. We're operating the system a little more conservatively. We don't let the brine tank concentration get as high as we originally planned. We're looking at the pre-treat to see if we can increase the concentration. Concentration just simply turns into how often you have to change out tanks, and you get less water back when you don't have this high concentration. We had planned to operate at about 85, at what we call the 85% level. We're about 70%, and until we work out the fix to the change to the flush water, we'll probably stay there. And we've been very stable. You haven't heard us talk about UPA failures in some time. The oxygen generator was the one that was giving us trouble here recently. We had determined that it has to do largely with the pH level in the water and the reaction between the water and the cell stack itself. We've changed how we operate the OGA. We keep the water flowing all the time. That was one issue. It keeps us from stagnating water against the screens and causing part of the problem. And then we introduced a filter, and in this filter is a bed that manages the pH for us, in a sense. We just installed that. We installed that on ULF 5, and then on the flow rate was too low. We thought that would be the case, but we're going to try anyway. On ULF 6, we changed out some QDs to get the flow rate up, which worked, and so now we've got the OGA up. Today, it's producing oxygen for 6 crew, and we believe that's a long-term way we can operate. And so in the future, you'll hear us. We'll manage the OGA with the electron and the gas on board, but you probably won't hear us talking about operating beyond 55%. That's one of the things we learned, that it's just challenges to the fuel cells if we operate above that. So we feel pretty comfortable about that. The water processor itself, we had a couple problems with it. Over time, we've removed a valve, which is basically getting clogged, that we didn't need, and installed a filter, which we showed at the flight readiness review. It's a very ugly-looking filter that we pulled out, but that just means it's doing its job, and that's really helped the water processor become more stable. So those systems are from a regenerative eco standpoint, we're starting to get our arms around that. The carbon dioxide removal system, we've been challenged from the first flight when we first activated it, but we've pretty much solved that one as well, and we've got both of the carbon dioxide removal systems working good. We do have a system called Mass Constituent Analyzer, MCA, kind of tells us the levels of BPCO2 and the partial pressures of oxygen and some other gases. That system's challenging us a little bit these days. It's a relatively small system. And we'll work through that. That's not as critical. We have other means of measuring the environment, so we're not as concerned about that. So overall, I think we're much better off than we were. It was good we had this extra time with shuttle flying to provide the supplies. We have at least one spare for all of the critical systems on orbit. In most cases, we have 2. And that's the exception, with the exception of the Seadra beds themselves. We don't have spare beds, but we have 2 Seadras, and only takes 1 to do the entire crew on ISS. So I think we're in really good shape now. That was almost 3 hours, sorry.
John Shannon, you mentioned something about where the workforce goes in terms of numbers in August. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said in terms of numbers. I don't believe it was in response to an earlier question about the future of the shuttle workforce after the last flight.
Okay, I'll just tell you what I told Tracy is right now we're at about 5,500 contractors. After the July 22nd layoff, and this assumes we launch on or around July 8th, and then a few other layoffs as work is completed in Florida, we'll be down to just under 1,000 contractors that will be doing the disposition work of the assets of the program and preparing the orbiters for being displayed in museums. And that's expected to be about a 2-year program. They will not keep that number of contractors and workforce all the time. It will be a steadily decreasing slope. And as activities are completed, those people will either be moved to other areas or laid off.
Irene Klotz with Reuters. I have a question for each of you. For Mike Suffredini, you mentioned about the increased science you've been able to get, and I was wondering if you could just give us an update on what the target number of hours for science on ISS is, and if it's still 40 hours a week amongst the 6-person crew, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, and I know there's quite a lot just of maintenance and everything on station, but why do you need 5 people operating station to basically get 1-person work week out of it?
Okay, that was a lot of questions there. Okay, so right after this flight, we're going to go to 33 hours a week average. Our goal is 35. So we'll get through this stage, and so when we bring up the next crew after this flight, we'll go to 35 hours. That was actually our goal, not 40. However, it is a little misleading. All of the exercise that the crew does generally is also human research. We don't count those hours, so when they're on the bikes or on the treadmill, or the ARED, they're doing prescripted runs, and we get data from that from a human research standpoint. So we actually get, in a 35-hour week, 35 hours per week, we actually get more than that because we count the exercise time. Because we don't count the exercise time, excuse me. You know, I could spend a lot of time talking about this topic. First of all, it's the USOS crew is where we get our time from. That's only on the USOS. That doesn't include the Russian research. So the ISS crew essentially has 3 crew on the Russian segment dedicated to Russian segment work and 3 dedicated to USOS. The crew work day, not counting their time exercising, is 6.5 hours per day. And we don't obligate them to work but about half a day on Saturdays and that's for cleaning up, cleaning screens and housekeeping type chores. So you can do the math pretty quick. You start asking yourself, how are we able to give them 35 hours a week? And it's just there's a lot to be done on station. It's a very big vehicle. It takes a lot to maintain it. Any extra time we can get, we do for research. You find that our crews give quite a bit of their weekends to research. So when we say we're shooting for 35 hours, in fact, every increment, we've actually gotten more research time than we expected because of the work that the crews do over the weekend just to participate. And we used to call it Saturday morning science. Sometimes it's Sunday morning. It just depends on how the crew is feeling and whether they have the extra time to give. So we don't try to find things for the crew to do. We carve out 35 hours and we have to work really hard. We have to manage the maintenance of the systems to make sure we give that to them. It's a big vehicle. It takes a lot to maintain it. Things you take for granted here on the ground, we have to dedicate time for.
Irene.
And for John, I know the NASA's human spaceflight program is not ending with Shuttle, but it certainly has been the cornerstone of the program, and I think to most people, the most visible part of NASA. And I hope this doesn't put you on the spot too much, but do you think that the agency is going to have something along the lines of an identity crisis as far as the outside world is concerned after Shuttle stops flying?
Well, I think it's very fair to say that the space shuttle for a majority of NASA's existence has been the icon of the human spaceflight program. So now we're going to retire it, and I think this is my personal opinion, Irene, is that that is okay. We have a significant breadth in the activities that we're going to do. We'll focus on ISS. It will become the cornerstone of our human spaceflight activities. We've got the commercial crew and cargo activities coming along, and I kind of like my mental image is that NASA should be doing those things that are on the leading edge. And the shuttle has been an amazing learning tool to provide us the platform and opportunity to learn how to operate in low Earth orbit. We've learned how to assemble, we've learned how to do spacewalks, we've learned how to control the medical aspects of spaceflight, especially long-term spaceflight. We've learned a lot about just how to do things in space. And now I think it's appropriate that we are handing that over to commercial companies to capitalize on that experience that's been learned. And so given that leading edge kind of theory, I think NASA should go and expand our sphere and take on the activities that are outside of LEO. So we'll kind of leave behind LEO to ISS and commercial and human spaceflight. For NASA, we'll work on the challenges of doing things in GEO or high Earth orbit or potentially, lunar orbit. We have the proposal to do near Earth object activities. And so that to me is the leading edge activities. We're leaving behind the LEO, I think, in good hands, and we'll go on to the next thing that is difficult to do. And I think most of the folks that are involved with NASA understand that with the limited funding that we can expect, that you can't carry everything with you. To do that next thing, you have to give up something. And it's appropriate in the right time with ISS and the configuration that it's in right now to give up the LEO piece of it and really concentrate on the next activities. I think another benefit that we don't really talk about very much is that comes from retiring the shuttle program is that now NASA has freed up a lot of people that know how to fly in space, that know how to get hardware configured, to do development, to do integration, to do the planning of missions, and can actually go and execute those missions. So my confidence that we're going to take a little bit of downtime, understand exactly what we want to go do. We have the right people to go do it. There seems to be sufficient funding to go do it. So I think there's a lot of excitement in the air when you realize that, yes, it's sad to give up what you know, but LEO is in good hands. We're going to go on and do the next thing, and we have the right team to go do it.
Gina.
Sari, ABC News. 2 questions. John Shannon, let's start. How's the dynamic different with 4 people on the crew?
Well, it is different. When we originally put this flight together, and Quatsi will tell you more about it in a flight director briefing later on. We did not think we would be able to rendezvous on flight day 3 like we normally do, just because of all the activities that happen in flight days 1 and 2. But as they practiced and as they worked through different processes, they were able to get to a point where we could rendezvous on flight day 3. The inspection's a little bit more difficult because that's a crew-intensive activity. Docking the same way. All of the crew will be up on the flight deck. There's nobody on the mid-deck. So there's some emergency activities that you would send Rex down to the mid-deck, and he would configure his comm to help out there. It is different, but as we started working through all of the different issues, we got to places where we were able to resolve most of those differences and make it look much more like a more normal mission. I have to say, there has never been a standard shuttle mission where you fly one mission and you fly another one that looks just like it, and we're going to end up exactly the same way. Is this one took a lot of care and a lot of thought by the operations team as to how exactly we were going to be able to pull this off, and I think they did a tremendous job.
And for Mike Suffredini, 5 years ago, I asked you if you thought there was enough wiggle room for you to finish the space station because there were all kinds of issues popping up. So looking back at the last 5 years, what were the moments that made you think you wouldn't get to this point?
That we wouldn't get to this point?
Wouldn't get to this point. You got here. What did it take to get here?
Yeah, Gina, that's a hard one. We've worked. It's just a fantastic program to work in because you're never bored. We worked more issues than I could even remember at this point. We have been challenged. Just to have this flight was an important milestone. There are some systems that we worried about. Oxygen generation was one I really worried about, whether we were going to figure out how to tackle that before we got to the point where we didn't have a regular logistics train. That's been an important one for us. We've been really, ultimately, throughout this program, we've been relatively blessed from an anomaly standpoint, but the pump module failure taught us a whole lot. And to me, that's an opportunity for us. Every time we have a failure like this, it's an opportunity for us to learn. And as long as we learn from them all, then we'll be okay. But along the way, I guess I always assumed we'd figure out how to get there. It's just the way we've been. I'll tell you, this is reminiscing, and we did a lot of this about a year ago, but when I knew we'd be okay was on the flight where we discovered, it was the Node 2 flight, and during that flight we discovered not only did the rotary joint for one of the solar arrays was damaged at the point to where we didn't believe it would be repaired, but we also learned during that mission that we knew how to tear a solar array. And by the end of that mission, we had repaired the solar array and had begun to focus on how we were going to live with this joint. And ultimately, we didn't have to replace the joint. And so once we got through that, I kind of felt like this team could tackle just about any problem that was dished out. It's a very, very dangerous environment, space. People don't, I think, normally think about that. And when shuttles launch and land, we all understand the risk associated with that. We've lost dear friends in the process of both of those phases of flight. But on orbit, we live with very real risks that we can't do a whole lot about. It's the risk you just have to learn to live with. One is, and we read about it last week, a risk of things that are also co-orbiting the Earth with us, and sometimes they pass our orbit, sometimes they pass a little too close. Often, most of the time, we get to maneuver. Sometimes we don't, and then we shelter in place, and that is a risk we live with every day. But when I look at all the things we had to do, the fact that we got STS-135, I think, put us in a posture to let us wait for the next logistics train. So to me, it's always been about having everything we needed to do what we ultimately said we were going to do with this vehicle. We spent a lot of money on it. It's now time for us to utilize it, and I hope that we'd be in a good position to focus on utilization. I think we are.
Get Robert.
Hi, Robert Perlin with CollectSpace.com with two questions, one for each of you. First for John, to follow up on something you said just a few questions ago. Do I understand correctly that transition and retirement is going to take about 2 years, and then is that when the Space Shuttle program formally comes to an end? And how big of a task is it during that time to archive the knowledge of a 30-year program?
All right. Robert, we're not waiting until the final wheel stop to get started on transition and retirement. It's been ongoing for about 3 years, really. And as we would end an activity, then we would clean up that area and disposition resources. Things like Palmdale, we cleared out of Palmdale and demilled all of the hardware and sold it off. You saw like Pad B has been coming down. Those are big examples. There are many, many, many smaller examples. Knowledge capture, data archiving, records retention. That's all been going on, and that's been good because there is nobody bored in the shuttle program. I guarantee you. If they're not doing flight activities, they're doing transition retirement kind of activities. Will we be 100% done with everything associated with the shuttle in 2 years? No, that would be not reasonable to expect. I think all of the big things will be done, and then the smaller activities will just be handed over to the individual centers where those resources are located for them to disposition. We'll concentrate over the next 2 years on things that are outside of the fences of the centers, at contractor sites, making sure that they're all squared away, and we've dispositioned all the resources and recorded all the activities that we needed to. So we're projecting probably about 2 years. The shuttle program will end 30 days after wheel stop on Atlantis on this flight. That'll be the official end of the shuttle program, and then there will just be a Space Shuttle Transition Retirement organization that we already have set that up. We know who's going to run it and what their activities are going to be. So really the end of the shuttle is 30 days after Atlantis lands.
And for Mike, in the rare case that this mission had to take CSCS safe haven on the space station, where does that leave you at the end with the space station? Can you still support a 6-person crew at that point, taking into effect the supplies they're delivering with this flight?
That's an excellent question, Robert. In fact, what we showed through our work is that we, in fact, it's a gradual coming down of the crew. It's not one flight comes up and all 4 crew go home. So we begin relatively early by removing one of the crew, and then eventually come down. By December timeframe, we're down to less than 6 crew actually. So from a resource standpoint, the resources aren't quite as challenged. Then the crew actually the crew number stays down below 6 for a while. And then what we made sure was that given the normal vehicle traffic that we can expect, not including the commercial cargo vehicles, so we made sure we didn't have to rely on those, that by the time we got the last crew person home, we could reconstitute back up to 6 upon the return of the last crew. And it was, I've forgotten, a few weeks later we fly a Soyuz up with a full crew of 3, and we get back up to 6 and can continue on. So that was the assumption that we made.
Hi, it's Denise Chow at space.com. The question for, I think, John Shannon, but perhaps either of you. Just curious as to whether, from a program perspective, was it a lot more challenging to manage and process the payload for this mission because it was the last? And when it was announced that you were going to go ahead and fly 135, were there special arrangements made to accommodate cargo that would need the capacity of the shuttle to bring it up?
Okay. That's actually both of us. We had made sure that we were really well aware as we went through the budget and authorization and appropriations discussions last fall and into this spring, that we were very mindful of the dates that were required to protect crew training, to protect cargo configuration, to make sure that we had everything that we needed to be able to fly this flight at this time. And we were very clear with both Congress and the administration of those need dates, and we worked, I think, very closely with them to make sure that was understood. We protected those dates, and because we were running under in our budget significantly, we had some room to be able to process the things required to stay on track for this flight. So we treated it fairly, pretty much like a regular mission from a shuttle standpoint, and Mike can talk about what actually goes in the MPLM. So.
Yeah, we also early on for STS-134, the launch on need flight, we decided that the supplies needed for the launch on need flight was very similar to supplies we need on this flight for a standalone mission. That is, if you had to do a launch on need because we had stranded the STS-134 crew on orbit, they were going to consume quite a few of our supplies. So essentially we needed a full MPLM, so when the shuttle left, we'd be in a good configuration to continue on with ISS. And so early on, we had pretty much decided we'd have a fully loaded MPLM as part of this flight, and we had manifested an LMC because we didn't know if we needed it, but it was always good insurance. And then we made sure that we protected the team that does the work to load the MPLMs and manifest and essentially hands-on load the LMC were protected in our budgets through the end of when we expected STS-135 to fly. And as you may recall, the LON was in the late June timeframe already. So we had kind of, because of what we needed to do if we had to do the LON, the 135 mission itself was essentially the same. It was 4 crew, it was an MPLM. We'd hoped to unload the MPLM and rescue the crew at the same time. And so we've kind of been following this road for some time and made sure the team was at the right size to protect that throughout.
Okay, let me take 2 more questions here, then we're going to go to KSC, and then we'll come back. So I'm going to get Marcia and then Eric, and then we'll pick up with you when we get back from KSC.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press, with 2 questions for you, Mike. There's a perception in the public out there, I think, that I hear a lot, is that U.S. human spaceflight is ending when the shuttle retires. And John just said that the space station is going to be the new cornerstone for NASA's human spaceflight program. So my question to you is, how do you combat that perception that human spaceflight is ending in another couple weeks? And do you plan to make any adjustments to the way the space station is presented to the public to try to counter that? And then
Okay.
I have a follow-up.
Well, first of all, I hope to see all you guys at our press conferences because we'll still have them. And just because the wing guy's not flying, I hope you guys will come because, you know, things are going to happen on board ISS. And I can't do anything differently operationally, but we have tried very hard to begin communicating. We've always tried to communicate, but we're doing things different. I think the national lab is going to make a big difference. We're really reaching out to a broader community, and it's a community that expects, in a lot of cases, national lab efforts are efforts by individuals who want to create something that's going to benefit humanity. I mean, they want to make money, but you're going to read more about it. So I think that's going to help fuel the system. We still have many launches, all of which tend to get a lot of attention, the launches themselves. I would expect that the first few commercial cargo flights will have a lot of attention. The commercial crew discussion is something we've defined all the requirements for the commercial crew vehicle now, and we're a big part of that, so I think that'll help. But we do need help explaining to people the significance of this, and I think when we start focusing on utilization and spend more time on utilization and bring more folks to ISS to utilize it, it'll sort of self-evolve because of the interest. You know, AMS, I expect those guys are going to come out of the woodwork one day and tell us exciting stuff. It takes time to collect the data, so you know we don't talk much about it. But you expect exciting things there. There are vaccines that are going to be created for salmonella. It's only a matter of time based on research done on ISS. They're the same guys that turn their attention to the MSRA, it's called. It's a staphylococcus that you get. Often you find them in hospitals. Very hard to combat. We also have high hopes of solving that because of the microgravity environment. Pharmaceuticals in general, I think, will benefit. So, you know, if we're not going to get the same press, we're not going to get the same interest, but if we keep station fully utilized and we keep folks coming and going and utilizing for what it's supposed to be utilized for, then I think over time it will become more obvious. But that's the way we have to do it. We have to get it fully utilized, and as long as it's always being utilized to its fullest extent for the benefit of the U.S. and our partners, then I think it won't matter if we got a lot of press every day or whether we got a little bit, just as long as we got enough to make sure that we were utilizing it to the benefit of all. So, and what John said, I believe, of course I do, I'm the ISS program manager, but it is the cornerstone. It's not just the cornerstone because it's the only thing that from a human space flight that NASA's operating in orbit. But the partnership itself is going to be how we do exploration, and we will do exploration. It'll take us some time, but we're going to do human exploration, and the only way we'll be able to do it is with the partners. None of us have enough money to do it, nor should we do it. I believe we shouldn't do it as individual countries. I think there's a lot of benefits to us doing this together, and so the partnership that we established with the ISS taught us quite a bit about how to work together. And that sounds simple. That is incredibly difficult. Just to feel safe that the way they build hardware or the way they operate is going to be something you can lean on in the future. You got to discover that together in low Earth orbit. You can't discover that when you're between here and Mars somewhere and figure out that you guessed wrong. So this partnership is critical to our future. So while ISS is going to play a role in technology development for exploration, and maybe a departure point, who knows how we end up operating, probably the biggest gain will be the fact that we have a relationship with the partners that we know how to build spacecraft and fly together, and we'll do that together beyond low Earth orbit.
Eric Berger with the Houston Chronicle. A question for John Shannon. There's obviously going to be a lot of eyes on your launch, and the coast of Florida is going to be pretty busy. Does that create any unique challenges, all of the attention, all of the people in the area on launch day, concerns about making sure employees get to work on time, or are there any complications associated with that you're planning for?
Well, we've faced it the last few launches. You know, we'll just see how it goes. If we end up scrubbing on July 8th, Depending on when we, would have the scrub, we'll decide whether we're going to do a 24 or 48-hour turnaround based on traffic. We do expect a significant number of people, it being summer vacation and the last flight, and there's a lot of excitement down in Florida to do that. We'll deal with traffic, and we'll deal with when's the right time to bring the team in. It doesn't make sense to make the decision now because you'll look at weather and other things that we can't predict at this point. From a team standpoint, though, there's no difference in the way we're going to operate, in the way we're going to address risks or problems or anything else. There was some speculation that we would feel pressure with the president and his family coming down a couple tries ago and having, it was predicted 750,000 people, and you just don't feel any of that inside the Launch Control Center at all. We ended up scrubbing for a redundant heater on a triply redundant system, but it was the right call to make because if we'd lost the other heater, you potentially could have put the crew into a bad position during reentry. And that's just the way the team has learned to operate. It's part of a few questions ago we were talking about, the not as obvious legacies of the shuttle program. That's another one of them. Is that despite being in a glass bubble and everybody watching you and not just second guessing what you do, but second guessing what you might do. The team operates extremely well and extremely safely and has developed a set of operating criteria and rules that they follow to the letter. And I just think that when we get there on launch day, we'll be in the control center working any issues that come up, and what goes on outside is not going to play any part at all.
Okay, let's see. Let's get Marcia's follow-up back on the front row, and then we're going to go to KSC.
Quick, easy question, Mike. All the food that's going up, it's been described as a year's worth of food. Is it all American food? And I'm assuming it all has an expiration date of 12 months, or or is it a combination of international type things?
Let's see. The MPLM is about a third full with food alone. It doesn't quite get us to the end of the year, so we're flying food on the ATVs and HDV as well, but the combination gets us at least a year. Yeah, they have expiration dates. It's not always a year. It just depends on what the food is. The expiration dates are very conservative, so occasionally we can go beyond the expiration date. We talk about it before we do that, but none of our food's going to expire in that period that we're on orbit. So we've protected for that. We eat, the first food that comes up gets eaten first, and this will be eaten at the end of 2012, and the expiration date easily protects that. Oh yes, we're carrying all U.S. food. The Russians take all their food up on progresses, and if we carry U.S. food for Russians, so the Russians are allowed to eat our food and we're allowed to eat their food. But our agreement is we fly it up on our own vehicles because it's just, they have to accommodate the upmass, but it's easier than shipping it to another country and then flying it.
Okay, let's go down to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida for a couple of questions down there, and then we'll be back here.
Hi, it's James Dean from Florida Today. John, you mentioned earlier back in like the January timeframe, working under some tight budget constraints. I just wondered if you could touch on the budget situation a little bit in terms of is that why you really had to go fly now? I know at one point we were talking about obviously you would think flying as late as possible would be to everyone's benefit. But is that, why you're going now? We've been told that, if there for some reason had to be an extended slip, you could handle that. But, where do you stand in terms of money, and is that what's driving your schedule right now?
Sure. Well, you talked about January, and in January there were just a lot of unknowns. We didn't know at the time how long the external tank issue was going to delay us. We didn't know if we were going to have to bring a significant number of workforce back on. We were just getting through trying to understand the budgetary impact of the layoffs that we had late last year. Back when we were fully operating in the shuttle program and producing and integrating and moving things across country, we ran at about $200 million a month. After the layoffs and when we just went down to a sustaining engineering and operations team, we were at around $115 million a month, but we hadn't really realized that yet. We expected that, but seeing it as you were going through the month-by-month budget review and making sure that was true was important. So there were a lot of unknowns in January, and we hit our budget targets. We actually were under our budget targets every month. Resolved the external tank issue. We got permission through the administration and the Congress through the authorization bill to go fly 135. It was contingent on some safety reviews. We did those, and they were accepted. So it all just kind of came together. We're still running at a pretty low rate with the program, and even with all of our TNR activities and a lot of severance that has been paid out, we're still under about $140 million a month, and that's pretty remarkable. So I think we're in great shape all the way to probably September timeframe. We could delay out to that as far. But if we did that, we would be taking money away from the transition and retirement activities, which you do have to fund at some point, which would take away from some future activities. So the sooner we can get this flight flown and button up the program and start on our transition and retirement activities, the better off will be overall for the agency.
Thanks. And just regarding the shuttle retirement happening now, we know, of course, the shuttles could fly many more missions, but station assembly, its primary mission, is complete. I'm not sure what the shuttle might do moving forward if you were able to continue flying, other than running MPLMs and that sort of stuff back and forth. I just wondered if you could speak a little bit to, do you think it's appropriate to stop flying now because you've essentially completed the mission, or could you come up with lots of things to do if you had that opportunity to keep going?
I can always come up with lots of things to do with the shuttle. I think that's what that was the proposal, that when we were kind of knocking around shuttle retirement and what's next, and the thought was that you would fly it twice a year to provide the logistics supply chain to the ISS. Now we have at least in development, is a multinational redundant logistics supply chain going to ISS, which I think is pretty strong. And having the shuttle go away is causing it to get even more scrutiny to make sure that it's going to be sufficient. James, the bottom line is there's not enough money. Would I like to fly shuttle 2 times a year to go ensure that ISS was in the best possible shape, or maybe go back up to Hubble again, or maybe do who knows what? Sure. I think it's a national capability that we're losing. But again, you weigh that against, you've done what you set out to do with the shuttle. We got Hubble in extremely good shape. We've got ISS in extremely good shape. Now we have other areas coming up to take over the LEO functions that the shuttle did. We can take that money, and I think just as importantly, take that workforce and apply it to the next leading edge and expand the sphere of operations that we do in human spaceflight. And I think that is extremely important. And what we're doing is we're sacrificing the shuttle to enable us to be able to take that next step. And if we were going to retire the shuttle, this is the time to do it. The ISS couldn't be in better shape, I think, than it is right now. We're pretty much out of volume. We're gonna pack it full before we're done. And while we can always come up with other missions, it's an okay time. And I think that we're going to just expand the breadth of things that we do as a nation and as an international partner. And so that's kind of how I came to peace with all the decisions that were made.
Todd Halverson of Florida today for one or both of the gentlemen. I'm thinking back over the assembly period and the 159 or 160 spacewalks that were completed in the assembly and maintenance of the station. And of course, we have the last spacewalk of the shuttle era coming up on this mission. I'm wondering what you would pick out as the most significant problems encountered during spacewalking assembly, and I'm wondering if you're surprised that there are so few to point to.
Yeah, Todd, I tell you, if you go back to the early 90s time frame, it was pretty intimidating when we looked at how in the world we were going to assemble the ISS and the number of EVAs that were required, and we referred to that, you all know, as the EVA wall, this wall of EVAs that we would have to do, and they would have to be successful in order for the ISS to be a functioning vehicle. And so we started doing some tests in the payload bay before ISS was the first element had ever been launched. And we did tests of connectors, and we did tests of quick disconnects and bolts and tools and different assembly methods and things like that. And that test program that we did, I think, really helped us understand a lot of different design features that we would need to make sure were included in the ISS design. And we had the brand new NBL out at Sonny Carter Training Facility that we started using and practicing. And to do a spacewalk is not, well, let's put on our suit and go outside and figure out where our tools are. It is incredibly choreographed, incredibly scripted. And that is why, and I think this is just a NASA thing, right, is that we practice a lot. We practice everything a whole lot. And we practice contingencies a lot, and we think really hard about what could go wrong, and then we practice on those things, and then we think about the next thing that could go wrong and practice those. That's why the EVAs and the spacewalks were successful. When I look at it now, ISS is enormous. It is so big. And if you look at some of the translation paths, they are just going and going and going. We never really had to deal with that, of course, with the shuttle payload bay, right? You're not translating very far, and if you have to go very far, you use the arm to take you there. That was the thing that I think just amazed me. And as we started to do that, we found out we had a problem with our gloves. That whether from micrometeoroid hits or other sharp edges or something else, we were getting some cuts in the gloves, which really alarmed us. And very quickly, the team was able to turn around and reinforce critical areas in those gloves. And we went from having a major problem that we were really concerned about to something that we don't even hear about anymore. So I think the key to the spacewalks and what has been done to make sure they're all successful is just preparation. It just absolute 100% preparation to get ready to think about contingencies, and then to learn about it, because we debrief quite a bit after each flight and after each spacewalk, learn what went well, what did not go well, and then go modify what you do the next time. And that continuous learning behavior, I think, is key to it, that and just repetitive practice.
Thanks. And I'm wondering, people after we'll stop on this mission are obviously going to look back, and they're going to inevitably be some folks who ask the question, was the shuttle program worth it? Was it worth doing all of these flights to build the space station, and was the shuttle program worth the expense that the American taxpayers put into it? And I'm wondering what your answer would be to that question.
Yeah, I think, Todd, that's a very valuable thing to ask about any endeavor, right? Is when you look back at it, because that's how you learn, and you can modify maybe what you're going to do next time based on what you just learned from this one. I think that, the people that don't like the shuttle, and they're out there, they'll go back to 1972 and say, wow, you guys said you would, fly every week, and it would be regular access, and it would cost, I don't know what the number is, but a very low amount of dollars to go fly a flight. You guys didn't make that, so the 30 years of shuttle operations was a failure, and that's ridiculous. The shuttle that may have been the initial thought, but to have that thought after 30 flights, human space flights for the nation, we were not in a position to say that was something that we thought we could go do. I think it would be very naive to do that after such a limited amount of experience. What the shuttle was is it was an unbelievable learning tool. And we were able to take this vehicle that is incredibly capable. You can do robotics, you can do spacewalks, you can do payload deploys, you can do payload retrieves, you can do Earth observation, you can do science laboratories, on and on and on. We were able to learn how to do all those different kinds of activities in low Earth orbit. We were able to learn how to keep people healthy. Things like space adaptation syndrome, which was a big problem in the early shuttle flights. You don't hear about it much anymore. Different things like bone loss, on ISS, they're doing the things required to understand how to mitigate that. Those are all things you have to do if you want to move outside of low Earth orbit. And so as a learning tool, the shuttle was amazing. And we built this tremendous body of knowledge in how to not just get off planet Earth, but once you're off planet Earth, how to operate in that environment. And so now, I can't put a dollar value on that national capability, on that body of knowledge. We have it now, and now we need to make sure that we use it and that we move forward, and our next programs build on that body of knowledge for beyond low Earth orbit activities. So, how do you put a dollar amount on something that is priceless in my mind? And that is what we have learned over doing shuttle operations for 30 years. We've matured as a space program. We've matured as a nation in how to go into space, what to expect in space. Even if you take something as devastating as the accidents, what did we learn out of that? Well, we learned rigor. We learned that there are no small problems, that you have to go back and look at flight history, and you have to understand exactly what you have and exactly what you're flying. And we also learned resilience. I mean, the worst thing that could possibly happen to us happened to us. And we still picked ourselves back up and fixed our problems and had the courage to go fly again. Those kind of things are priceless. Learning how to do that as a nation is incredibly important. And now we're going to take this team that has performed so well, and we're going to move into the next sphere of operations, and I think we'll be just as successful in those activities.
Okay, we're back here for the time we have available. We'll run the rest of the questions across the front. We'll start with Mark.
Hi, Mark Kirkman, Interspace News. I don't normally ask the non-technical fielding questions, but I got a couple of them. First for John. If I remember correctly, there's only been 7 or 8 program managers, and I was just wondering if you can reflect on being the caretaker here at the end of the shuttle program and maybe how that squares with your thoughts when you first walked in the door as a new hire. And then my second question is, tomorrow, I guess, is the last ascent sim for the crew, and then the shuttle simulator essentially becomes a museum piece or a toy. And after wheel stop, the flicker becomes, well, I don't know what you're planning to do with the flicker. If both of you could reflect on kind of the mood around here. I'm not here all the time, but I certainly remember how things used to be. And the parking lot looks emptier. The cafeteria is emptier. I was just wondering, is that your observation, and what your thoughts might be on those from both of you on that one? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm going to take 3 questions on that one. The first was number of program. I think we've had 11 program managers. I haven't counted, but I get advice from them occasionally. I have not had much time to just sit back and reflect on it. I do feel pressure that we have to preserve the legacy that those guys have built for us. It's been an amazing run over 30 years, and I want to end the program right, and I think that's the whole shuttle leadership team. They really want to end it right. It would have been incredibly unfortunate to have ended the program after Columbia and have all the things that the shuttle program had done just be remembered by that. I think picking ourselves back up, completing station, getting it squared away, getting HST squared away, we're on a great run here, and we need to just finish up really strong. And that's really my focus and the team's focus is you feel that. You know, it's, I don't know if you're ever on a sports team or band or you know, drama or whatever, you know, and if you come into something with a legacy of extreme success, you feel pressure to keep that string going, you know, and keep that success going. And I think the team feels that. That's a very good motivator, though. That's a good thing. You talked about the shuttle mission simulator, the motion base. Tomorrow's the last set of ascents, we hope. And then we'll shut it down. It's going to an unbelievably fine institution, and it will have a great home there. And we actually brought some grad students from Texas A&M in and let them fly it so that they could see what they were getting, and hopefully they'll be able to put it back together and be able to use it as a teaching tool. So, you know, there's a lot of that going on. We'll take the full fuselage trainer out of Building 9, the crew compartment trainer, the simulators, things. So things will be emptying out. It's a little bit of a shock, you know, because my whole career, all that has been here. But I think, again, you get the determination and the motivation. Let's fill it up with something else. Let's fill it up with what the next program is going to require. And that needs to be our focus. I would be very upset if the shuttle team went off and their next activity was to plan our 1-year reunion, you know, or plan our 5-year reunion, or just, you know, that is not what these guys are all about. These guys are all about let's quit talking about last and let's talk about firsts or nexts, you know, and that's the important piece of it. JSC itself, you talked about the cars. JSC will get smaller. Already we're a smaller center than we were. 2 major programs are going away. But that's okay, because I think as we get smaller, we're able to focus a little bit more too, and start looking at the things that are going to be required to enable that next round of exploration. So, you know, you're going to have cyclical employment based on the mission. We don't keep jobs here just to have a certain number of jobs. We keep jobs here so that people can actually do something and actually accomplish a mission. And as the mission focus becomes more clear, then the jobs that are required to fulfill that mission focus will appear, and then we'll be rolling again.
Oh no, he said it all.
Sorry.
Except I didn't.
Your car's here all the time.
I thought the simulator was going to A&M.
It is going to A&M, and that's what I was talking about.
Philip Sloss with NASASpaceflight.com. One for each of you. First for Mr. Suffredini. I understand the plan is for the station altitude to be raised again up to about 410 kilometers later this year. Is that the altitude that the station is going to be maintained at for the near term?
Yeah, for the next little while, that's where it'll be. We're on the upswing of the solar cycle, which increases drag, and so we have to raise the altitude to protect for the prop. But it's an interesting problem that we're working over the next 10 years through 2020. We have a certain amount of prop that both ourselves and our Russian colleagues are obligated to fly. And we want to make sure the tanks are full at the end of 2020 in case we extend the life of ISS. We would like to fly lower because the MMOD environment's a little less at the lower altitudes. All of our analysis always assumed we'd be at the higher altitudes. So we'll be at 410 for a while, and then we'll come down and probably manage ourselves around 400 kilometers through 2020.
Did you have a follow-up, Philip? Let's get a follow-up from Philip back here, and then Dan.
For Mr. Shannon, just a clarification: is the USA commercial shuttle proposal completely off the table at this point?
You know, I have not been very heavily involved in that whole proposal or discussion. I'm aware of it. So the answer to your question is I don't know. I don't know the status of it. What I do know is that we're not going to release Endeavor for unrecoverable actions in its retirement processing until we get a letter from headquarters to do so. We've done a lot of work, just all the down mission processing. We've removed the forward RCS. I think we're about to remove the OMS pods if we haven't done that already. But we're not taking any action that's unrecoverable until headquarters tells us to do that. That's a little different than Discovery. With Discovery, we just rolled right into it. And that is because headquarters, I think, is letting all of the commercial shuttle discussions complete before we would take those actions. We're not really ready to do unrecoverable actions yet anyway, so it's not going to cost us any additional money. When we're ready to do that, then we'll have the real in-depth discussions with headquarters to make sure, hey, we're going to go do this and get their okay, and then we'll press on. Jim.
Yeah, Jim Oberg with NBC for a question for each of you. But for John, first of all, as Atlantis gets ready to depart the station, how thoroughly will it be cannibalized for anything that can be taken on board the station? And does that include possibly things on it, such as the spacesuits that they have to go home with them, but will spacesuit components perhaps be sent back up on supply flights later? And how thoroughly will all those parts be cannibalized to extend ISS?
That's the nice part, Jim, is that we've had time to kind of think through the logistics on all the different subsystems on spacesuits and computers and cameras and all the other stuff, and we've been able to put that into the logistics train here to get it on board so that we don't have to do that. We put the boom on last flight, that was, and we're able to fly back home without it. We found out a way to do inspection. It always seems like every flight there's a few things that maybe we toss across the hatch that the ISS crew asks for. But remember, we still have a mission to fly after we undock. We've got to go free flight for a couple days, do all of our checkouts of systems, or do our last inspection. And we have to retain the capability of doing a spacewalk if required to close doors or bring in a KU antenna, or if we found some MMOD damage to take care of that. So, we have to keep the shuttle in a pretty robust condition as we leave ISS. I don't think there's a lot of things that are going to be asked for at the last minute because we've had a couple of years to think about it and prepare for this.
You were talking about the EMU? You need them to come home with, but there's pieces in the EMU you might want to put back up on the station.
We have 4 on orbit.
Okay.
On ISS, so they need theirs for their payload bay door closure anomaly. So we have plenty. Like John said, we have plenty of logistics on board. Might be 1 or 2 things we ask for, but they'll be minor things. Sometimes.
Use once they're done. Just a joke. I have a more touchy question for you.
Okay.
We've been seeing a transition. Once the shuttle has no longer been involved in crew swap on ISS, a transition of the ISS crew composition used to be about 50-50 U.S. and Russian, and it's now settling into a 3-to-2 ratio, 3 Russians and 2 Americans. It's been that way since early last year. It's going to be that way for years to come. Mm-hmm. How did that change in composition come about in the ratio, and was it because of the end of the shuttle crew transportation?
No. I haven't even thought about this, Jim. When we talk about the USOS, that's the partnership of ESA, JAXA, CSA, and NASA. And when we went down from 4 to 3 crew, it was understood that the Russians get 3 of those crew and the USOS gets 3 of those crew. So by the nature of the percentages that we owe the partners to fly, which you said is exactly right, we generally have 2 U.S., 1 of the partners, and 3 Russians. Although a few increments ago, we had 4 USOS crews and 2 Russians. So, but that's always been in the plan, was that it was going to be 3 Russians and 3 or 4 USOS. We're prepared to go back to 4 if the commercial vehicles, in fact, that's the requirement we gave to the commercial vehicles, to be able to carry 4 crew. Our systems are sized to have 4 crew on the USOS. And at that point, then the U.S. crew opportunities will go up a little bit if and when that occurs. But we've always been there.
Okay, last question. Thank you.
Alan Boyle from MSNBC. Just a couple of questions on commercial operations. First, for John, are there any thoughts about how many shuttle program workers, either probably civil servants, might go over to support commercial operations somehow or other, or have you had any thoughts about whether those people would go on to the exploration program. And then for Mike, it sounds as if it's pretty sure that the SpaceX demo flight will go all the way to the space station, probably later this year. Maybe if you could just characterize a little bit more what the decision timeline is. It sounds like the decision is pretty firm, but if there are other places that need to be put in place, maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
On the where is the workforce going? On the contractor side, I don't have as much insight into that, because there's no reportables to me on that. But I will tell you that I talk to companies, the Bechtels and the BPs and the Boeings and Chevrons and all the different TIs kind of companies. So across this incredible spectrum of different industries, they are all coming to the job fairs and they are all very interested in the shuttle workforce, because this is a team that they're good at solving problems, they are good at working details, and they've grown up in a safety culture that is very valued outside of this agency. So I don't have specific numbers on the contractors. The civil service workforce, they don't face the layoffs the same as the contractors, so they're moved out into other areas. Some are going into commercial crew and cargo activities. Some are going over to help Mike. Some of them are going into the new exploration program. Some of them are going into just engineering programs. A number of folks have left after their shuttle activities were done, and they've gone into petrochem and aviation and medicine and electronics, IT kind of fields. So I hear back from all of them, and that's actually kind of interesting. As one person will go off to another industry, they come back and grab like 6 of their best friends or people that they knew could really do the job, and then they bring them back in. And so the shuttle workforce being dispersed, it's kind of the rising tide floats all boats, right? There's a lot of industries that are going to benefit from the unbelievable workforce that is available to them. And I'll just be kind of honest here. NASA, when we're recruiting, we kind of get pick of the litter a lot of the times in colleges. We get the best kids, and they come in and they co-op or they do summer interns, and they are unbelievable. They are so good. You keep them here and you grow them up in the culture like I talked about. Even folks that don't come to work immediately for NASA, they may go work for a contractor, and the ones that really are outstanding, a lot of times we'll hire them into NASA. So the quality of the people that we have is tremendous. And as we disperse them, what I see is that we're going to raise the capability and how good those different industries are really across the board.
To answer your question, some time ago we agreed with SpaceX that they could modify, assume that take the time to build the Dragon for D2 would be the same Dragon as D3. So that would be a schedule hit to them to try to do that. But we agreed to that so they could be on course for the combination of those flights. Like I said this afternoon, we intend to have the meeting where we'll discuss in detail our perception of what we may or may not get if they try to combine flights, and whether or not we could be comfortable with that. But that decision has not been made. I personally believe we'll get there and be able to combine the flights. However, from a schedule perspective, you'll hear the SpaceX guys talk about they're just about done. You hear that from Elon a lot. And it's one thing to be done with hardware. It's another thing to be done with your software, and they've handed all the data to NASA so we can do the verifications we have to do. This process, this commercial process, means that the whole launch vehicle, the whole launch process, as long as they meet the FAA rules, they can go fly. But from a safety perspective, there's a sphere around ISS that we protect, and once they come inside that sphere, they have to meet all of our verifications that are for safety safety functions. To some degree, you can give up mission success, and we've let them take that risk. But we don't allow them to take the risk of vehicle or crew safety. So inside that sphere, we have to know the systems operate. There's quite a bit of data they have to pass to us, and there's quite a bit of work we do with that data to finish our analysis to complete the verifications. And I really think all that's going to take us to the close to the end of this year to get that all done. And so, that's the challenge. Can they get the data to us soon enough? Can we get our work done? We'll do it as quick as we can and fly as quick as we can safely fly. So the decision's coming pretty soon, but it hadn't been made yet relative to combining flights.
Okay, that's all the time we have for this briefing, but stay tuned. Shortly, you'll hear from the two flight directors that will lead the mission of Atlantis to the International Space Station. Quatziala Barujo and Chris Edelin will talk to you in detail about the mission details of Atlantis' voyage. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and we'll be back shortly with that second briefing.